Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Reddit AMA here at Search Engine Journal. I'm super excited today. I'm going to do a lot of ums and ahs because that's just kind of how I talk. But I get really excited about the topic of Reddit. And so I've been writing a lot about it. I've been sharing a lot about it. And I've been hearing a lot of questions from, digital marketers, SEOs on, whether Reddit's the right opportunity for them or how they can have success. And so, I've been, writing about these things and we've been talking about them, but I thought, we should just really pull together some key individuals from Reddit who, have a lot of years there, a lot of experience, and, just bring them right to you so that we can ask some questions and learn a little bit more about Reddit and figure out how we can be more successful there. I think, as a whole, I think everybody here, if you're here, I think everybody here knows that there has been a pretty big buzz around Reddit over the last year. And as search marketers, we've seen, Reddit showing up in search results. We've heard everybody talking about the impact it's going to have on LLMs. We've been seeing all the numbers and wondering, is, this a trend or is this something we should start paying attention to? And I think we're kind of at that point where we need to start paying attention to it. And so here we are today, joined by Rob, Nisha, and Susan. And I'm going to let you guys just introduce yourselves and tell a little bit about yourself for the audience. And then we'll go through some housekeeping and get this party started. Who wants to start?
I can start. You want me to start?
Go for it.
Billingsley, thank you for having me. Hi, everybody. I run global customer marketing at Reddit, which means that you can think of us as the team that owns the business brand and does the marketing for all of our advertiser and agency audiences around the world. I have a strong background at Google and YouTube and a lot of growth stage experience in ad tech. So I've been around for a while. Thank you again for having me.
Awesome.
All right, I'll go next. Hello, everyone. My name is Nisha Madoyan. I am a director of product marketing here at Reddit. I spend most of my time thinking about the market and our customer needs internally, and then helping be the voice of some of our products out in market. And prior to Reddit, my background also a few growth stage startups, and also primarily building scaled monetization products, whether back in the day being for publishers, mobile apps, or CTV. So was really excited to come to Reddit and start to think about what that would look like for us as a platform.
Rob, it's up to you.
Bring us home. All right, good.
Bring us home.
Hey, everyone. I'm Rob Gage. I look after global insights here at Reddit. So basically, my team's job is to understand the conversations and the communities that are evolving on the platform and helping brands understand then how they can connect with those communities. I've been at Reddit about 3 years. Prior to that, I have a background of a lot of agency, a lot of brands. I think the through line for me has always been really trying to understand why consumers do what they do and how brands can authentically connect with those customers. So luckily, I get to play with the greatest focus group that's ever existed in our Reddit data and help brands do that right now. So thanks, Brent, for having us.
Absolutely. And, not that it's that important for me, but I'll just give you a little bit. Brent Csutoras, I'm obviously a team member here at Search Engine Journal, but I've been on Reddit for almost 20 years. I've been marketing for companies, working on the platform, involved with some of the evolutions of the platform. And so I have a depth of knowledge on kind of the hows and whys and where things have gone. And I may jump in here and there and just add some commentary, but I'm going to try to stay out of the way for the most part. So that all aside, let's go through a little bit of housekeeping. There's not a ton to talk about today. If you notice up in your top right corner, you'll notice there's a little CC button there. That's closed captions. So if you would like to see what's being said, you can absolutely click that. When we get done with the webinar today, the AMA today, there will be a small survey that will come out. And it doesn't take long, but if you don't mind taking a second, I'm sure everyone is going to tell us, I can see from the chat that the video disappeared for a little bit. Hopefully it's back. But just give us your feedback and we'll continue to try to improve on these events every single time. Lastly, There's not going to be any slides to send you, but this whole video will be sent out to everyone as well as some details on how you can reach out to everybody that's here today and how you can reach out to Reddit and anything else that's important. And we will be, getting out information and doing a recap post on everything as well. So that said, I think we're going to start off before we dive in and just run a poll or two. We just want to get a little bit of feedback from the audience. Sometimes I use these, sometimes I don't, but today I definitely want to kind of steer some of our questioning based on what you guys are experiencing. So I'm going to pop the first poll in there. And let me see if I can make this right. There you go. So when you think of Reddit, you think, and this is to my digital marketing audience, you think, I want to connect with my audience on Reddit, right? I genuinely want to connect. I want to rank better in Google with Reddit posts. I hear this all the time. I keep seeing Reddit. How can I do that? Right? I want to run ads on Reddit. It looks like an amazing platform. I want my ads to be there. How do I do that? Right? That's what I'm thinking of Reddit for. I want to get traffic from Reddit. I want to mine audience insights from Reddit or something else that, maybe not on this list. And we would love to hear you pop it in the chat if you do have something else, because we felt like we covered everything. So I'll give everybody just a second or two, and then I'm going to go ahead and close this out because I think there's 2 ties here, which is interesting. So I was just kind of waiting to see if it would break, but we'll give it just a second. All right. So we'll go ahead and close that out. And then, like I said, I have one other poll that I want to throw up. And there you go right now. Are you currently advertising on Reddit? I'm really curious, not only on the poll, but I'd love to hear some feedback, either here or later on how things are going for you. Like Reddit ads have been progressing, month after month for years. And so I'd love to hear how people are doing with that. So obviously, yes, no, I used to, or I plan to in the future. And we'll give it just a second to kind of update and see where things are going with that. And all right, I'm going to go ahead and close out this one. We have a good enough statistical analysis on that. And with that said, I think we're going to go ahead and dive into our first question. Everybody ready? Do it. All right. So first question we have is, what have been some of the key elements for Reddit's growth during 2024?
Sure. Okay. So I will take this one and I'll answer in 2 parts. The first part is, let's take the earnings call big company lens and talk about growth in 2024, which has largely been driven by improvements to the platform to make it easier to use. There's a ton of value in the platform, but we've been making investments to make everything more findable and for it to be easier for people to connect to the communities or the comments or the conversations that they're looking for. So there's been a lot about just findability and better tools for posting. We've seen huge increases in our conversation pages, which are the pages where people are actually posting and engaging in dialogue and conversation as a result of those investments. And then we've had really strong international growth, largely driven by the machine learning approach we're taking to translating into non-English languages. So we've seen success with that throughout 2024, and we'll see that really start to expand into 2025. As a business and on the advertiser side, we've seen a lot of growth in our performance marketing, so mid and lower funnel, also due to a lot of investment that we have made there. And then we've seen really aggressive growth in our SMBs and mid-market as we really look to invest and communicate better with our long tail. So that's sort of the answer for the financials and for the business. But I would say in general, some of the key growth that we're seeing is really about people wanting human connection. So we are living in a world of just tons of deluge of information all the time. There's so much choice. There's so much information. Then we've got AI coming in. We've got paid influencers. There's just a lot of information out there. And people are really looking for a way to curate it, to figure out how to find it and how to find things that they can trust. So really what's driving a lot of our user growth and even growth within the advertiser communities and the way they're communicating is just that need for authenticity. And Reddit is a wonderful place for people to connect with real humans who are being authentic and having conversations.
Awesome. I think that's a great answer. Rob mentioned in one of his previous presentations, the validation phase, and I love that kind of way of naming it. Right? Is just that I think that one of the things that we see is just this dissatisfaction with the traditional search experience because it's not nuanced enough. It doesn't really get to a point where you feel like you're making your own decision. And I think that that's more important than people really give it credit for. Is that coming to your own decision? So jumping into another question, with this growth, one of the things that we hear a lot, and this is not a surprise that this question's popped in here, is, and just to be honest, this is what they said about social media as a whole when it first came out, is this just a trend? Is this something that 6 months from now will go away? Is this just a temporary thing? Or is this something that is here to stay?
I'll jump in on this one. So if we are a trend, we're probably the slowest trend on Earth since we've been around for 19 years. So I'll start there. But in all seriousness, I think it ties back to what you were saying around the validation phase. So what we're finding with Reddit is there is a vital role to be played around finding people you can trust to cut through all the noise, the deluge of information you're getting. And that's only getting worse, getting noisier. We think about the amount of spawn con out there, the fact that Google results are harder and harder to find exactly what you want, right? The fact that influencers, we all know, are hawking whatever goods they can to make as much money as they can, right? All of that is driving people towards a place where they can talk to people just like them and find out whether all these great claims that they're hearing from advertisers, if they're actually true. And so I think in that sense, we're only going to see Reddit continue to grow. Look, for those of you who don't know, half of America comes to Reddit on a weekly basis, right? You can't see we're a trend when half of America is here. We're 50% men, 50% women. We're not a trend when we're literally ubiquitous, right? And the thing about, and I'll pick up on what Susan was saying, one of the interesting things about Reddit and our growth is we don't have the leaky bucket that other platforms do. You don't grow out of Reddit. You might have come when you were a 20-year-old gamer, but then as you get your job, there's a place on Reddit to learn about that. As maybe you get married or find a partner, there's a place to talk about that. As you have kids, there's a place to talk about that. As you enter your second and third career, there's a place to talk about that. So what we see is that the cohorts of people that joined us even 19 years ago, not only are they still with Reddit, but they've doubled, tripled, quadrupled their amount of depth and the amount of Reddit that they're ingesting on a weekly basis. So no, I mean, put simply, TLDR, definitely not a trend.
That's awesome. I was actually thinking back to when you first broke 10 million users. And I remember saying, like, back then, I was like, look, where do you see a company that has literally like a 300% growth rate month over month? And this was 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 2 years ago, and it just continues and continues and continues. So I definitely don't think it's a trend. And I've been trying to get that across for years, but now I actually have some validation with that. So diving in a little bit further, a lot of interest, and I will kind of speak to this, Susan, as well, as one of the key factors I think that is crediting, even if it's not accurate, the perception is that Google's inclusion of Reddit, and including Reddit more and more and more over the years has been a big factor in the growth of Reddit. I will comment just that, that has been showing up in Google for like 4 or 5 years. Like, I mean, granted, maybe people are starting to notice a lot more, but I always used to think about it as like, hey, you could rank for these things as well. But that aside, what do you think people, the question is, they want to learn more about how they can leverage Reddit for organic search in an authentic way?
So I think that, tell me if you get mad at this answer, but really it's about adding value. Really, it's about creating content that people want that will show up in search. And yes, we could get into, there are several examples of brands who will actually start campaigns to drive traffic to Reddit. And we have seen that in several cases where they actually are not seeing engagement on their website, but do see more engagement within communities on Reddit. So they will actually start creating ways to drive traffic to Reddit or to incorporate into their search campaigns. But in general, I think the way to think about it is that people are craving answers. People are craving the answers to their questions, to their problems, the information that they need. And creating value on Reddit will mean that it shows up, and it will mean that people will find it. I mean, Reddit was, I think, the most used Google search keyword. I used to work there and I'm fumbling it, but it was the 5th most searched word in 2024. It's because people actually, even without, it has either shown up so much or people intrinsically know Reddit is where they're going to find their answers. And so be on Reddit and create value. And that's the same thing we've been saying about search for 20 years, is how do you show up? Well, you create value, and you create it consistently, and you create what people want.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Rob. Oh, sorry.
The one thing I want to add to that is, like, I encourage everyone to think about it from 2 lenses, which is one, which was the question, which was, how can I make sure that I leverage this organic search in a unique way? To all of which, what Susan said was absolutely true. It comes with you authentically engaging with the communities and providing that value around whatever your category might be. Then there's another component, which is, we know that, every second over 100 people add Reddit to their Google searches, and they end up on Reddit. So what do you then do as a brand? And I think of that as like making sure that you are extending your search campaigns or whatever you're doing to make sure that you are also appearing on Reddit. And that's where our ads products come into place, and things like keyword targeting come into place. You're ensuring that as users are making their journey from Google to Reddit, you're showing up in the most contextually relevant places.
Rob, did you have something you want to add?
One more thought on this, which is human behavior change here. And you touched on it, Brent. Google searches are getting incredibly, unbelievably more complex than they've ever been. They are looking for this hyper specificity. And the beautiful match between Reddit and Google, and the reason why Google refers to Reddit results so often, is because Redditors are incredibly information hungry. And so as an advertiser, you have the opportunity on Reddit to go extremely deep, to get extremely specific, and Redditors just eat it up. Okay, 4 to 5 Redditors actively want brands to give them information about their products and services on Reddit. 90% of Redditors are open-minded, and 76% of them are actively coming to the platform to have their point of view challenged. What that means is you have people in a mindset of information seeking, where you literally cannot give them enough information. And the difference between Reddit and the more ephemeral platforms is then that information is now, it lives forever. It's indexed, it's searchable. So if a month from now, or 6 months from now, or a year from now, someone else has that same question, guess what? It's already on Reddit. And so if I was an advertiser out there and I was thinking, well, how do these two work together? It starts with put all of that information, as much as that information is humanly possible, onto those subreddits that relate to your product.
100%. And I was just going to actually comment kind of similar to what Rob said, and that's that, solve the user journey. Right? There's a journey, a problem resolution, solve it, right? And you can find out how to solve it, then you're good. And I would tell you one other tip, because we actually do this a lot, is that Google will show you Reddit when it's looking for a validation in that search query. So when you see Reddit showing up for certain queries, then that lets you know that's a type of query that is looking for validation, and you have an opportunity in that query. Where you're not seeing it, it's not a validation query, and Google's not going to show it no matter what you do. So that aside, I'd love to talk a little bit. This question kind of guides us. We're talking a lot about search, organic, which is great, but what makes Reddit unique as an advertising platform? I know there's a lot of interest within Reddit, a lot of growth from the ad department, and there has been for a long time, even if it's not as visible. But lately, there's been a lot of announcements, a lot of new features. I'd love to hear what makes you unique.
Yeah, it's an amazing question. And I'll basically say there's 3 things I'll bring to the table today as differentiators that make us really unique. One is conversations that happen on Reddit are different than conversations that happen anywhere else. 2 is that we have our audience, which is large and growing a ton, and is full of high intent, high engaged users. And finally, the conversations of driving real decisions. To everything Rob said, people are coming. They're hungry for information. They're hungry for validation. And so they drive real decisions, which means purchases, which means spend, and which means lifetime value. So I'll break each one of those down. So when we say conversations are different, what I mean really there is that conversations, first and foremost, are organized on interest. We're the only platform where they are structured and organized around passions and interests, where people are literally raising their hand and saying, I'm into this, I'm interested in this. They're also publicly available, to Rob's point, and anonymous. So what we find with that anonymity is that people talk about things and talk about them in a way that they wouldn't on a platform where they're personally identifiable or they are talking to people that they already know. They'll talk about topics that they might not otherwise, and they'll talk with an honesty and an authenticity that they might not elsewhere. And then we also have a very democratic upvote and downvote process. And so in that process, what that means is that the most helpful, highest rated content is what is curated and is visible, and that keeps that at the top. And so what all of these together really mean is that they are conversations that are authentic and, to Rob's point, are highly trusted. So we find people really coming to the platform for these very authentic conversations to get answers. So to the second point of a large and growing audience around with high intent and high engagement, we see people coming. The number one reason they're coming is to gather information, to get recommendations, and to find answers to questions. So they're showing this high intent, and they are highly engaged in the process, and our growth is outpacing any other platform. And then finally, to the third point, this actually has business results. So what we see is that the conversations are naturally commercial. So if you imagine you've got 100,000 communities, from everything to camping, to TV, to skincare, and everyone in those communities is getting excited, talking about gear, talking about what they're going to buy next, reviewing products. So all of those lead to actual purchase decisions and also trusted purchase decisions, because we see that people who want to hear from brands, which is 90%, they actually take the recommendations, they tend to spend more, and they tend to spend more over time. So in general, what all of this together means, right, is that what it means for you is Reddit as an advertising platform gives you the benefits of social and the high intent benefits of search. So you can find your people in the right place at the right time, but specifically in a context that will drive business outcomes.
Great. Thank you. That's a really good answer. Very complete. And just taking it a step further, we've talked about organic and we've talked about ads. How this question's asking, how do you balance, using ads and having an organic presence? Can you do one or the other? Do you have to do both? Which one do you have to do first? Just thoughts on kind of how you manage it and balance that.
Yeah, I'm happy to take this one. So there's a few things at play here, right? A lot of which was mentioned earlier. Now more than ever, we know that the purchasing journey for consumers is changing. We are shifting away from a lot of the paid for sponsorships that Rob and Susan both mentioned, and shifting more towards validating and research and making decisions around authentic human recommendations that have a sense of consensus. Again, a lot of what we talked about throughout this conversation so far. So then what does that mean for you as a brand? I will get into how you use these two things together. However, what I want to say is that I understand that we probably have a wide spectrum of folks here on the webinar, ranging from those that have maybe larger marketing teams to those who are either, I think I saw a nonprofit in the chat, or a small business and are trying to figure out how to do it with minimal resources. You do not have to take on both. You can absolutely do one or the other. But obviously, what I am going to talk about is the power of doing them together. And so let's go ahead and talk a little bit about how you can do these things together. First and foremost, Redditors want to see authentic engagement from brands and businesses that are relevant to them. My assumption is you or your clients, if you're an agency, have a thing, a good or a service that delivers value to a category. And I bet within that category, you are an expert of sorts. And I'm fairly certain that that category exists on Reddit today. We've talked about a number of types of communities that exist. I saw someone in the chat asking, is there a place for B2B on Reddit? Absolutely. I find it hard to think of a conversation or a topic that is not on Reddit. And so you all already have value in your specializations that you can bring to this community. And we see a number of ways that you can do that. Drive authentic engagement. So find the conversations around your category and join them. Answer the questions, ask the questions, participate. You can also, if you have a larger business and there already is a cohort of users, you can start to build a community on Reddit. We also see a ton of brands utilizing Reddit for customer support. And my favorite as a product marketer are the folks that actually utilize it for market research. The Reddit community loves to share their perspective and their expertise. And what better way for you to get market research for absolutely free than to ask as a group of leaned-in users? I really think it's unique in its ability to do that. But what is key is, in order to be successful, you need to understand how you can uniquely add that value. So it does require getting to know the conversations and the topics that are relevant to your category. And in addition to that, like, be human, be authentic, and be genuine in your responses. Which leads me to, you're wondering, like, how do I even do all of these things? And that's where Reddit Pro comes into place. Like, Reddit Pro is a free tool that provides insights and trends around your category, your business, and the topics that matter to you the most. It will also provide you performance results around, like, your organic posts. But ultimately, it's your guiding light. It will tell you what communities are talking about your category. What trends are they talking about? It will help you see where to go within our platform to start having this organic engagement. And as you do that, that starts to be an incredible tool for building your campaign strategy on Reddit, which you can then utilize to run ads. Once you know what is relevant for our communities, you can actually start to build a campaign that utilizes the right copy, targets the right communities, and really start to make sure that you are now taking that authentic engagement, but making sure you're getting the wider exposure that's relevant in order to start driving whatever sort of action you need as a business.
Yeah, and the one thing I would add to that is just know where people are in the user journey. Sometimes they're in an exit intent where they're looking to go make a purchase, and an ad is a great representation at the time. Other times they're still in an awareness, pre-awareness, problem recognition phase, and that's where organic engagement with them really helps to connect with them prior to them seeing your ads. So if you really, and Reddit Pro is great for combining both of those. So yeah, a really good resource that everybody should be checking out. Next question. We talked about balancing organic. How can brands organically, this is kind of in line with this, join meaningful conversations? And I get this a lot. Like, there's a really great conversation happening. I, as a brand, want to jump in with that conversation. How can I do that as a brand without pissing everybody off, and at the same time being effective and getting in those conversations organically?
So I'll start this one, but you guys feel free to jump in. So I think this has been mentioned several times, but it's something to remember. Like, authenticity is a really big thing. Just remember that you're talking to humans. So people on Reddit want to be talked to just like all of us want to be talked to. You want to be talked to with respect. You want to be talked to as if your opinion matters. You want to be talked to, in all those same ways. And so when people are worried about pissing people off, I often am like, well, would you say this to your friend? Would you say this to somebody that you like and right? Is talk to people regularly. And I think you're right. Understanding, or at least predicting, where people are in the purchase journey, so sort of what to say and what to ask, is a great thing. But we have a bunch of examples. I see people are asking for real world examples. So why don't I just give a few examples of how people are doing this and have seen success? But by and large, I think what we want people to know is that people are open to hearing from brands. They consider in their curation of all this deluge of information, in their look for validation, they want information from people as well as from brands so they can make informed decisions. So they just want to be able to trust that what you're saying is authentic and real. So I think Nishay mentioned earlier that some people use this for customer service. I think Fidelity is a really good example of this. Comcast does this as well. But I saw a question in the chat that was also like, well, if you're talking as your brand, does that deplete your credibility? And no, it doesn't. Because Fidelity, if you actually call Fidelity's customer service line, they will direct you to Reddit. They use it as a customer service platform, and they actually have office hours, and they will use it for broad communication, but also dialogue and two-way communication. So we see people engaging. That's a really heavy use case, and I understand that. You can also just jump in with questions. We've seen small businesses come in. Like one example we have is a sort of vegan condiment spice company that would just go to vegan communities where they knew their targets would be and just kind of ask questions, and not as a brand ad, but propose try to get a thought about how people would be open. And they ended up using those to devise ads later. But it was a way of being like, hey, are you guys into this? Or what would you think about that? And then just rattling off some examples in the gaming community. And we've got COD Official that does a lot of community engagement. Keith from Sonos is actually a great example. If you'll humor that one, and then I'll let you guys jump in. But if you guys remember, Sonos came out with their recent update to a massive, terrible uproar about how terrible the update was. And this one guy who was a Reddit user who worked at Sonos took it upon himself to just go spread like tips and topics. And Keith from Sonos is now like a dude, right? And everybody knows. So that will show the power of even just one guy and going to talking to people like they're regular people and really actually changing brand perception and spreading information. Do you guys want to offer one other one? I can say is mass communication, like the White House and the Navy use it as recently as the hurricanes will use it just to communicate outward.
Yeah, the weather support, like there's a ton of organizations that do, like there's a storm, they track it, a lot of that stuff is super valuable. I remember once we did TikTok's campaign, and that was, an interesting campaign, talk about, a lot of negativity and stuff and turning it around. But it really was down to one key point, and that's that when people realize they're talking to a human, it changes the conversation. Right. As soon as they realize they don't look at you as the company anymore. They look at you as the person who works at the company, and then they soften a lot. So just having a human voice is huge for that.
Yeah. And I would say one that we've seen too is with a US publisher who actually just started sharing some of their content as articles. Mm-hmm. They were non-paywalled articles, and they just did that, trying to drive traffic to their website. But ultimately really adding value. And what they were able to find out from that is not only which content resonated, but they found that Redditors would share it between subreddits. So they actually ended up identifying an audience that worked for them that they didn't even know. Like one example was about Madonna that they had posted in a regional, I think it was like Cleveland, where she was going to be, but it ended up going to a Madonna community, going to a pop community, and they actually ended up finding pockets of audiences that they wouldn't have known otherwise. So that was just from sharing and seeing if they could add value.
Do I keep moving, Brent? Or
Yeah. So
keep going.
So, with that in mind, I'd love to ask, we talk about finding these conversations, right? And knowing where these things are happening, which subreddits are we looking at, which conversations are we tracking? So one of the questions here is, what's one of the best strategies for monitoring Reddit? Like, how do we monitor Reddit for knowing those opportunities? But this question specifically also asks to find insights about an organization's reputation management.
Yeah, I'll jump in on that one. Look, we know it's a challenge, right? You probably don't realize, but Reddit every 2 weeks generates a Wikipedia worth of content. Just kind of think about the amount of content there is to sift through. So it could definitely be challenging. One of the easiest ways is what Nishay mentioned, which is to leverage Reddit Pro. Right? Reddit Pro, through your brand, tells you exactly when people and where people are talking about your brand, your products, and then your category. So it gives you a really nice foothold. So I'll park that because I think you can research that and do that on your own, or Nishay can speak a little bit more. But speaking more broadly and more kind of theoretically of how to approach it, the best way to think about it is you need to be a fan of the things that your customers or consumers are fans of as well, right? You need to think about what are the subreddits that my consumer, my customer is most likely visiting because they're passionate about it. And I guarantee you, I challenge you right now, name anything, and there is likely a subreddit about it. There's subreddits dedicated to stapling bread to trees, for goodness sakes. I mean, we literally have everything under the sun. So you need to just think about, well, what is it that my consumer or my customers most interested in? And then when you enter those subreddits, think about, well, what can I uniquely add? This sort of builds on what Susan was saying in the earlier question, which is, I think about brands have two things that consumers don't have. They have access and they have resources to create really amazing things. And so the best organic contributions I've seen and the best ways in which you can connect to and keep up with your consumers and their passions is to think about what they're passionate about and think about what's standing in the way of them executing on that passion or embracing that passion. Who can you give them access to? Who can you bring to the subreddit to give them more information? Or what can you create for them that brings their dreams or their passions to light? Those are almost always the easiest ways into that. But specifically, Brent, you had asked about then what is about your own reputation management. And I'll just touch on that real fast and then move it back over to the team. One other thing I want you to understand is that for the most part, Reddit conversations stay within each individual subreddit. Only 3% of posts actually get cross-posted to another subreddit, meaning the opinion you might find in one subreddit could differ quite wildly from what you see in another. And that's why it's really important that you don't over-index or over-rotate on the opinion of one subreddit over another. Quick example, the Frame TV by Samsung. I love this TV, right? It's the one that disappears on the wall. It's got a cool magnetic thing. Beautiful. If you go to r/home theater, that subreddit hates that TV. They literally created a bot that says, do not buy this TV. But if you go to r/home design, they think that's the greatest freaking TV that's ever existed. And why? Because they have different buying criteria, of course, right? So I say that only because most brands that I see when they make a mistake, it's that they get obsessed with the one or two subreddits that don't like them, and they're missing the hundreds and thousands that either already love them or are very open to them.
I love that. It's like know your customer segment.
Yeah. That's a great point. And I think you really nail it with people get caught up in these subreddits because they're generalized, like automotive, right? Or something. They're like, they don't realize that the community, you have to look at what they think about the actual topic you're going to discuss as well, right? Because you can find a community that looks perfect and then it's never going to work, Exactly. So I think that's great. I think that's wonderful. There's an interesting post in here that a question here about success on Reddit and how do you create threads, right? We know, right? But if you don't know, a lot of Reddit is posting into subreddits, and Reddit as a user acts as a dashboard to show you all the popular content of all the different, subreddits that you've subscribed to. So inside the subreddit, you're getting content that's sorted based on popular vote and different aspects that would make it a popular thread for people to read. But within your dashboard, you're getting that through all of the subreddits you subscribe to. So how can you craft content on Reddit that gets the clicks, that gets the votes, that gets the views? I'm going to take it a little further than the question was and say, how do you craft for Reddit?
I'm happy to start this one, and then I encourage everyone else to jump in. I think first and foremost, it starts with understanding your users on Reddit. We talked about this a bit. And I'll keep it relatively short. What that means is use Reddit Pro to get the insights. It will show you your communities. It will show you the topics. It will show you the trends. That starts to give you a sense of what is the relevant conversation and what is the value that I can particularly add. From there, we have a number of ways that you can engage both organically and through paid. We also have some Reddit unique formats that you can utilize. For example, earlier this year, we launched freeform ads. And think of freeform ads as these multi-media ads where you can bring together all sorts of information across your products and services, your website, whatever it might be, and bring it all together and provide that back to the community and start a conversation around it. You can, I think what's important though, above anything, is making sure that you have a clear answer to what value does this bring back to my Reddit community. And then from there, there's a number of ways, both organically and paid, that you can utilize to be successful. I would love to maybe, if relevant to the audience, talk a little bit about what you can specifically do as a marketer to drive, go beyond like CTRs and engagement clicks and actually drive lower funnel performance. But I'll let you all tell me if that's going to be relevant.
Before you go there,
go ahead, Rob.
I was going to pick up on your thread about adding value. Maybe I'll double click on that just a little bit and give you 3 specific techniques on how to add value. Redditors love games. They love quests. They love tasks. The US Navy has done this amazing campaign in October, which allowed people to pretend they were hunting a submarine in the Atlantic, and they were actually able to crack this code. There were something like over 10,000 people tried it. Only 14 people got it correct. All right, to give you a sense of how hard it is. So that's task 1. The second thing that I think they love is they love being treated like early adopters. We've seen a number of beauty brands who do early drops, or they'll go to a small community and say, we're going to give you this product beforehand so you can product test this. So use them almost like a focus group. And the third is access. So again, give them access to an expert, to information, to things that they can't get elsewhere, and they will geek out with you. So those would be my 3 suggestions for how you get those clicks or upvotes. Whether you do it paid or organic, either works. But think about, how are you creating a game? How are you giving them early access and then behind the scenes access? Sorry, Nishay. Definitely go into the performance though, because I think that's super important.
Yeah, I want to hear what Nishay is going to talk about. I want to throw one 2-second comment in there. 2-second comment, and that's avoid clickbait. Like, that stuff does not work, right? And a lot of times, you can get away with it a little bit now, but it used to be the case that you would avoid title case, right? That's kind of a clickbaity thing. It says you're trying to make a title for a click. Really avoid those type of things. Go ahead, Nishay.
Awesome. Okay, so getting into lower funnel, I think first and foremost, I'm particularly excited about this space because it's an area that we've been focused on heavily over the course of the past year. And it's really driven by, I think, what makes Reddit unique. So we talked about this a little bit. We have a unique and unduplicated audience. So Reddit is growing rapidly. And what we find is that many of our users aren't active on other platforms, which means get to those extended customers. Secondly, we know we have high intent users. Over 40% of conversations on Reddit relate to a product and service, and 25% of those are specific to product recommendations. Lastly, we've made a number of investments that I think make it a lot easier to make sure that if you do like the 3 areas right, and I'll get into what those are, our systems can help optimize it for better performance. So I'm going to break performance down into 3 areas. Your setup. It sounds boring, folks, but it's like the foundation of the house. It's so crucial in making sure that you're getting to the right people at the right time, your creative and your audience. So the few areas I want to touch on about setup, and I'm happy to follow up with more resources because I realize these are more, there's more to these. So it all starts with your data connections, signals, CAPI, Pixel. You've heard of all of these. What is important here is that not only that you have it set up, but that the quality of the setup is right. Because what you do then is you maximize your ability to match events that are happening around users. And when you maximize the events, what you can then do is better optimize your campaigns and also do a better job of re-engaging with those users to drive them further down the funnel. The other thing that I encourage you to think about is attribution. Attribution needs to be thought of uniquely for each platform. How you operate as a user on Google when you search to click is very different than how you operate on Reddit when you are coming to research and validate. So you need to be more thoughtful about your attribution windows that really captures the value of that longer consideration phase. The other component for setup that I'll share is placements. So we have two types of ad placements on Reddit. We have feed and we have conversation ads. It is important that you utilize both because that's how you can make sure that you're maximizing and extending your reach across Reddit. Feed is really important. Our users are there. They're highly engaged. Conversation ads are also important because that's where you see a lot of SEO traffic coming in, where they go straight to a post that's having a conversation on a topic that's relevant for your business. And then last, when it comes to setup, is optimization. Not all of you have the same outcomes you're looking for. Make sure that your conversion goals, when you set up your campaign, reflect the right event you want, whether that is site visit, signups, purchases, add to cart. Make sure you're being specific because that's what enables better optimization on the back end. Now, quickly on creative, a few things that we've seen in terms of best practices: use shorter headlines, simple assets with minimal text on the actual creative asset, and aim to have multiple creatives when you are running a campaign. We recommend on average between 5 to 7. And what this does is it enables our system to find the best performing ad and make sure we're optimizing towards that ad.
Great.
Quickly on audiences, and I will wrap it up. I just feel really strongly about the components that drive success. Make sure that you have your re-engaging audiences by utilizing website retargeting, your customer list, but also make sure you're thinking about prospecting and getting to those new customers by utilizing lookalikes and especially keyword targeting and using dynamic audience extension. What that enables us to do is take the seed that you're providing us and make sure that we're finding relevant users that are most likely to take the actions that you are looking for. Now, all of this is on setup. A few ways to get best setup ahead of that is we have an ads inspiration library. So this is a collection of high-performing Reddit ad creatives from over the past 12 months. And you can filter for your category and see what ads have done well on Reddit. And for each ad, we actually use an AI model to identify the top 3 creative best practices and tell you and give you actionable insights about why those ads did so well. And then also, I'm not going to beat a dead horse, Reddit Pro for all the reasons that we mentioned above. I think utilizing a lot of what we just took you through is going to help you make sure that you are set up for maximizing reaching your customer on Reddit.
Wow. I got to make sure I get a readout of that from the caption because we're going to have to.
I'm happy to provide more. I feel strongly about it.
I'm going to have to.
It's so crucial for success.
I'm going to have to reach out to you later and see if I can get you to kind of contribute and write some articles because we could definitely use some in-depth on that, for everybody who's reading. I want to. We have so many questions, and I just want to reiterate to everyone, I'm going to do my best to gather all these questions and hound everybody to get some answers for you and put together a post and send them out to you. So we'll do our best to try to get as much as we can resource-wise. We've been trying to toss some stuff in the chat. I want to talk a little bit about, how you can build a community of your own on Reddit. I think we've talked about ads. We've talked about how to do it organic. We've talked about its place in search, but there's questions all through the chat, and it's a broad question. So I want to actually have each one of you kind of weigh in on this if you're open to it. Is that there's a lot of, well, what about my brand? Well, is my brand going to be okay? Well, what do I do different as a brand? So I'd love to talk, and you can pick any part of it you want, but if I'm going to build a community and I'm going to make a brand subreddit, should I? Or should I only participate in other subreddits as a brand? Should I be an actual brand with the brand name, or should I be somebody who works at the brand? These are the questions that I think a lot of businesses start getting into when they're like, I'm going to go and do it. Well, how do I have that proper setup and so forth? So can we just talk for a little bit about brands coming to Reddit? What do they need to know? Subreddits, accounts, etc.
Maybe why don't I start a little bit here? Because I think one thing we haven't touched on yet is one of the things that makes Reddit special, one of our secret sauces, is the moderator feature. And I think it's really critical here. So for those of you who don't know, on Reddit, whenever you post or every community, there are a team of real humans on the other side that review all of the content that goes onto Reddit, meaning that they're the ones who set the rules and guidelines for how the community will behave, the kinds of posts you need. If you're on r/cats and you post a picture of a dog, it's out of there. And the moderator knows that. And the reason I bring this up is because what you're speaking to, Brent, is essentially, I would say, 3 different models that a brand can consider. There's model number 1, which is really where fidelity, which Susan brought up, is going down, where they essentially, the moderators that run and keep that subreddit alive are fidelity employees. And it's very clear, and they communicate that, and they say, that's what we're here to do, is to have a place where people can come and ask questions about fidelity. There are other subreddits where it's a hybrid model, where there are many people on there who are just everyday Redditors, and then there might be a brand representative or a couple brand representatives, meaning that the brand has some influence on the content and the way in which the subreddit is run, but that they are not the sole determiners of how it's run. And then there's the third model, which we've mostly been talking about here, where a brand enters into a community run where the moderators are all individual Redditors, and the brand is just participating as any other member does. So all 3 of those are there. I'll give you a couple pieces of advice, and I definitely want to hear Susan and Nishay's take on this. Number 1 is it starts with what is the value you are adding, and how much capacity do you have to actually fulfill on that, right? In Fidelity's case, the value they're adding is this is where their customer service is going to be. Terrific. They're going to have all the information they need, et cetera, and they have invested the right resources to do that. For people or brands who pursue the hybrid model, this is more about how can they steer the conversation to places that are mutually beneficial for both the brand and the members of the community. And so in that case, they need almost like a traditional community manager style participant, someone who's willing to be online and on call all the time to answer those questions, but realizing that they have to strike a balance between selling their product and essentially creating good dialogue, healthy, open dialogue. Sometimes they have to allow for people to disagree with the brand. Someone had asked there before about, how do they make sure that they strike that right balance? Being respectful and understanding that some people may not like your product, and that is okay. They have to strike that balance. And then the third, I think we've talked a lot about, but in that case, you don't need someone all the time in there all the time. You could use a Reddit Pro to essentially guide you to when the conversation is above a certain threshold that you set, or entering a topic which you've deemed from a corporate level is important to you, and that's when you step in. So that's kind of my take. Just keep those in mind. But Nishay, Susan, add on, please.
Yeah,
go for it, Susan.
I'll keep mine short, but as the marketer in the room, I think, I guess that's not fair, Nishay, product marketer. As in marketer, let me say, the good thing about Reddit is there's ways to crawl, walk, and run, right? So what I would say is there's not one right way to be on Reddit. And the reason I feel compelled, and I have strong feelings about this as a marketer, is that you tend to be like, oh, there's pressure to like be on X, Y, or Z, right? You have to be really clear about your goals and what you need. And like Fidelity, they're adding a ton of value, but they're very clearly fulfilling their own goal too. They had a goal and they are fulfilling it. So what is your goal? Who are you trying to reach? And how many resources do you have? Because let's be real, the practical reality is it also depends on how much time and resource you have to put into these things. So you can start with Reddit Pro and start to just learn. You can honestly just go to subreddits and search for content about your brand and search for content about your topics and learn. And you can have there's questions about, should I have a brand account? Well, the great thing is there's business profiles, which is one thing, but there's also just having an account. And you can have an account and you can participate in conversations and see how it goes. You don't have to commit to huge stuff to just try it out. So there are ways to, if you don't have many resources, to go and learn and then to turn it into something bigger. Now, of course, I would also say, because we know these conversations are so commercial and because they have a role at awareness into consideration and into purchase, we see high efficacy in advertising. And so I would recommend that as just a very useful tool. But I think you got to start with your goal. You got to start with your resources, and then you can baby step your way into learning what works for you.
I mean, big plus one. I think both Rob and Susan cover that ground.
Yeah, I want to comment on what Susan and Rob said about if you having the resources to be successful. I think one of the problems with digital marketing and social media as a whole is that nobody's really taken the time to remember that it's still social, right? Like, it's like, think about if you were going to walk across the street and go into a civic center and join a club of a bunch of people in a fan base, right? Like, how would you approach that? Like, how would you walk in that door? Would you walk past everyone who doesn't know you, take the mic from the stage and just start talking to everybody like they should know you? No. Like, and if you only show up once every 6 months and walk around and talk to people, does anybody ever remember who you are? Do they ever build, respect for you? Think about it like a real social community, because it is. And that's something that too many marketers forget. And we're constantly like, hey, you see that campaign? That's amazing. Must have taken them like 9 months and thousands of dollars and tons of people. How can I do that with no time, no money, and no effort? Well, you can't, right? Like, that's the simple reality, is you can't, right? If you want to have success in marketing, you have to put the effort in. And I think that it's pretty clear right now that Reddit is the place to put that effort in. So anyway, that's my rant on that topic. But I have one last thing that's been popping up that I think we can maybe close out with. And that's, there's a concern that when people start getting attacked, how do they handle it, right? Somebody starts trashing your post. How do you handle it? How should you approach trolling, people being negative, people, you run an ad campaign and somebody's putting negative stuff in your comments? How should you approach negativity on Reddit, in your opinion?
So Brent, this is one we actually do have materials on. So we can post something after or send out where my team actually did a deep study, because look, I get it. Brands are concerned. And if you aren't familiar with Reddit, it can be intimidating. But I want to couch some of this so that folks feel a little bit better about it. First thing we learned is that overwhelmingly Reddit is a positive place. So no matter what category we study, we find between 4-to-1, 7-to-1, positive to negative. Even in insurance, let's be honest, no one talks about insurance in a happy way, right? You only talk about insurance because something bad happened. Even on in the insurance conversations on Reddit, it's a 2-to-1 positive to negative, right? And the reason being is that people come to Reddit most often to talk about things they're passionate about, and that's usually things they like, right? So that's the first thing, is you got to understand it's overwhelmingly positive. The second thing is, when it is negative, what we find is, depending on the category, anywhere between 93 and 98% of all negative comments are actually product enhancement suggestions. It's people saying, boy, I really wish the cup holders, this is a real argument, by the way, on Reddit right now, is what direction the cup holder should be. Should the cup holders be vertical or horizontal? It's intense. This is like Coke versus Pepsi on Reddit. I'm not even kidding. But my point is that these are the negative comments that are mostly out there. It's people saying, I really wish the product did this. And I think it was Nishay who said earlier, to me, that is a gold mine of a product innovation and enhancement opportunity, right? But even for the 7% then that are, not product enhancement, what we find is about 1% to 2% of that is trolling, and the other percent of it is people who are upset about the political stance or the moral stance of the company. Within that sliver of the moral stance, the overwhelming majority of those are not taking place within the purchase journey. They're taking place actually more in socially minded subreddits. And I said before, only 3% of all posts ever get cross-posted somewhere else. So what that means is, most of the time, if people are not happy about the morals of your company, it is probably happening in a subreddit that is literally about that topic. And in fact, most of the time it'll get downvoted. So if people don't like the morality of the car company and you're in what car should I buy, they're like, what are you doing, man? This isn't what we're here to talk about, right? So the community does self-govern. Let's get to the trolling, because that's the hardest part, right? The majority, we actually did a study, and it's in this deck that we'll post to you guys. It says, well, what do you do about trolling? By the way, 86% of Redditors say that if someone has critical feedback about your brand and the brand responds, they will see that brand in a better light. So it is overwhelmingly in your interest to respond if it's a reasonable request. But trolling, they overwhelmingly say just ignore it. either if it's a good joke, take the joke, move on. If it's not a good joke, most likely the Redditors are downvoted anyway, but just don't engage. Just let it go. Right. So that's my long-winded advice.
I think that's great. I'm going to add just a couple more like tactical tools that you all can use as marketers. So first and foremost, like, I think most relevant to Rob's point, and when we were testing Reddit Pro, we actually did find that the more you authentically engage with the communities that are relevant to your category, we actually started to see those brand sentiment shift over time. Because of what Rob said, we actually know our users want you there. And when they see you authentically engaging, it is valuable to them. And then as a marketer, one thing I always say is, well, first and foremost, brands have the opportunity to turn off comments on ads. And my point has always been, if you are looking to engage through an ad campaign, you should leave comments on and you should engage. And that's when it becomes a conversation, and your ad should reflect that. However, when it is not, and you are looking to drive some sort of outcome or click or whatever it might be, then you should leave comments off and really just focus on driving the objective of your campaign. So really, again, I think back to Brent's point, it matters on what you're where you are in the funnel and what you're trying to achieve.
100%. Love that. So that kind of takes us right up to time. So I'd like to take a moment to really just genuinely thank you all. I mean, Reddit is skyrocketing. I'm sure you are all super busy. So you taking the time out to come and answer a bunch of marketers' questions. We really genuinely appreciate the time. We're going to make sure that when we send out recaps on all of this, we're going to include information on how you can find and connect with all of us here, and how you can connect with Reddit directly at Reddit for Business is always a great, just Reddit for Business. And definitely we'll give you avenues to kind of get in touch and to be able to work with them more. Again, thank you so much, all of you, for joining us. One last comment. I am going to try to go through all the questions, and I'm going to try to track down everybody and see what I can do over the next couple of days to get as many answers and resources as I can. But we're, all busy, so please be understanding if I can't get everything for you. But I'll do my best. And thank you all again for joining us, and thank you for coming and sharing all of your information and wealth of knowledge with us.
Thank you, Brent.
Much.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, bro.
Cheers.